So how does web design affect your SEO in 2021? That's what I'm going to be talking about on today's episode of the BB&J podcast. I'm your host, John Lind. Great to have you. So when I talk about 2021 specifically, how does that differ from past years? The fact of the matter is, every year we go by, the algorithm changes a little bit, right? What Google values, what Facebook values, what all these different platforms value does change over time. And in large part, especially with Facebook, you have to be on top of it. You really have to get with the trends, for lack of a better term, but know okay, this isn't being favored by the algorithm anymore, so I need to shift over. Or even changes in behavior, because if you look at searches for certain things, it changes over time. I mean, there's even I think it's called the Carey crawl, where every year Mariah Carey's "All I Want for Christmas Is You" starts getting played and starts getting searched a little bit earlier, and that's the official, the semi-official marker for when the Christmas season starts. So even in a single year, what people are searching fluctuates. Just Groundhog's Day peaks in late January, early February. Valentine's Day peaks February. All these things are time of the year specific, so it's not unreasonable to extrapolate that to say that things can be year specific. I mean, look at 2020 versus 2021. What was a big thing that happened in 2020 that a lot of people were talking about, that a lot of social media platforms were having to adapt and change the way that they were approaching things to? The election. And elections they get a lot of people very passionate about the things they care about. So you're going to have algorithms changing to either try to deal with the way information is presented, deal with who's presenting information, perhaps work to put credible factual information on a separate priority than people's opinions, which may or may not be true. But without getting too much into politics, that's always kind of messy. SEO has to change over time. So what makes 2021 special? Well, I don't know about you, but even just looking at the door or at the window, there's a lot of things that even 2019 have changed radically. And 2020 was a really big learning experience for a lot of people, a lot of platforms. 2021 is where the rubber really meets the road and you have that implementation of those new things. But in terms of the main point, which is improving your website to improve your SEO, how can you do that in 2021? The first thing, depending on what's causing it, it can either be very simple quick fixes or a pretty complicated little thing, or even a really tough decision that you don't want to make. And that's page load speed. This is something that I think we don't necessarily think about all the time when we're designing a website, but we definitely think about it when we're experiencing a website. I mean, what is so incredibly frustrating about Wi-Fi? It's not when there's no internet, because oh, there's no internet, I guess I'll read a book or something. It's when there's slow internet. It's just enough that you technically can work, but it's so slow that you're just suffering. If you have a website that takes a while to load, you're tapping into some of that suffering. I don't think you want to do that. I certainly don't want to do that for my clients. Web design, part of it is optimization. Part of it is making it more efficient, or even, and especially web development. I mean, we talk about, design in terms of driving traffic. We talk about, generating the user experience. Well, how can you expect a user to have an experience at all if they can't even get to your page? Algorithms know this. They care about this. So if you have a page and it goes through and takes forever to load, that will damage your SEO score. How high your website shows up. And we want your website to show up well, because it showcases your brand, it showcases your company. It's wonderful for having, landing pages, trackable, scalable, all this stuff. You can do that through a website. It's a lot harder if your SEO is being hurt. And it's a lot harder to do those things online through your business if your SEO is hurt, right? Page load speed, there are some simple fixes you can do, but there's also, depending on what's causing it, that can be kind of tricky. So basic things you can do, things like optimizing site images, which I'll get into more, trying to trim down the amount of plugins or graphics you use. A lot of times if you have like a really fancy, design that all has to load before the page is delivered, that can cause problems. One thing you can do is have it so that it does, like you have your graphic, but it loads not when page loads, but when the user gets to it. This kind of staggering can turn, that's why you have a single, you have different web pages instead of the entire website on one page, because that would the flow would be off. And it would also slow down the page. But that on load, on focus, all that, on hover, that tends to get a little bit more on the technical side. So if you don't have a lot of experience with web design or web development, stick with things like cutting down on the graphics, cutting down on the big images, optimizing images. And let me get a little bit more into optimizing your images. Now, what do I mean by this? Is it, there's a side of optimizing images that is reaching your audience the best way, getting most of an emotional reaction that you're looking for. That is incredibly important. But you also need to be, when you're doing a site, when you're adding new graphics, when you're whatever it is, or images, you need to optimize it. You need to change things like the title. And search engines know what the title of your image is. That'll help them. That's almost like tagging an image, and that'll help them better SEO. I mean, it'll score better on SEO. They'll help them better deliver to your audience. People are looking for realtors in Montenegro, and your images all say realtor, Montenegro, Europe, real estate. That's going to do better on SEO. Another thing is scale. If you get images from, if you get images from some sort of like pre-built template, or you get images from a stock image collection, or from a high quality camera, or a photographer or videographer, they're probably going to be pretty big. And that's incredibly important to have as a default, because if you want to blow them up, if you want to put them on a big screen, if you want to put them on a billboard or print them out, they need to be high quality, you know? For web, all you're doing is slowing it down. You don't want to have tiny images, you know, you don't want to have like a 200 by 200 pixel little thing that's fully blown up on the top of your page, but there are applications where that's appropriate. You know, there's a little icon in the corner. Know what size you want to deal with. I would personally recommend 4 larger images on your site. Keep it between 1 and 4 megabytes. You can go a little bit higher, you can go a little bit lower, but that's, I found, the sweet spot that doesn't negatively impact SEO and web speed while maximizing the user experience. A low resolution image does not look like, that's more on the web design front end aspect of the user experience. You don't want to harm that, and a low quality image is going to make this site feel dated. It's going to kind of take people out of it. It's like, I'm not sure if you've ever heard, but when there's like an animation or something like that, really crisp and clear, and you have the voices and they sound good, and then all of a sudden you hear this like random lower quality voice, and it's like, it just takes you out of it, because it makes you realize like, oh, this is like people talking alone in a room and then stitching it together with this animation. The same thing can happen with your website. Low quality image takes people out of it. It's going to improve the load speed, I'll tell you that. But when in terms of optimizing your images, you need to get it between 1 to 4 megabits or megabytes. You can get it lower if it's for a smaller image, but if it's a large image, that's the sweet spot I found. In terms of titling, put those keywords there, the things that you want to talk about. Whatever you're trying to target, put in the title. Then you can add things to the image, usually in like a properties or what have you, where you can do things like changing the creation date, changing the address, all these things. Once again, a little bit extra work, a little bit extra research, but it makes a difference. The third thing I like to talk about to help you get your website improving your SEO, helping people find you in 2021, is utilizing backlinks. Now, what are backlinks? Backlink is where a website links to yours. It's really that simple. So the more websites link to you, the better it looks for you. I actually had a conversation with a real SEO specialist. And I was like, because he was talking about like paying for backlinks. So I was like, well, doesn't that like negatively impact your SEO actually? And he was like, no, more backlinks is better always. So whatever you can do to get more backlinks is going to be very, very helpful for your website. And what exactly does that entail? I mean, it's getting on other people's websites, you know, but links are actually a huge part of SEO. Some people might not realize there are backlinks, which are crucially important, but there's also the links on your page. If you don't have a lot of links, the a search engine is going to look at your website and say, oh, this is really static content. This won't take people anywhere. I'm going to be less likely to deliver it to people searching for these things, rather than, I mean, especially a site that has, you know, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, all those things linked. Well, that generates some backlinks for you inherently from those platforms. But that communication with the outside web world makes a world of difference. it makes a gargantuan difference. So if you're not effectively utilizing yours, if you're not tracking yours, well, that's also a problem. But you are going to be hurt if you don't utilize backlinks. If you don't utilize links in general, that's going to negatively impact your SEO. That's something you can do to your website. You go through, you see what could use some more backlinks, you see what could use some more links in general, and I promise you it will make a difference. And on that note, I'd like to end this episode of the BB&J podcast. As always, really appreciate you being here. Make sure to like and subscribe, and I'll see you next week.